I reckon this story starts about 13 years ago when I had to leave my home in Texas because I got a new job offer that I just couldn't pass up. This job took me far away, and I couldn't live at home with my wife, Mary, and our 2 kids anymore. Back then, my kids were about 10 and 8 years old. They're grown up now, 23 and 21, and have moved out to Houston, doing their own thing in the big city. Around the time I moved, something big happened in our country, the Great Recession. It was a tough time for many folks, with lots losing their jobs and money because of the economy tanking. Our family business didn't make it through and we went bankrupt. It meant no money coming in from the business anymore. So that's a bit about what's been going on with me. A lot, right? And now, with Mary not wanting us to live together anymore and not explaining why, it's been hard to deal with. After my dad passed away, I took over his construction business. It was a huge responsibility, running the business and taking care of my mom, my wife Mary, and our kids who were still in school. It was overwhelming, especially with the economy being so shaky. As things got tougher, we used up all our savings just trying to keep everything afloat. It reached a point where I had to make a tough decision. I started looking for opportunities abroad and tried my luck in various Asian countries. Eventually, I set up a new business in Dubai. That period was incredibly difficult, but my drive to provide for my family pushed me through. I had to leave Texas and didn't have a home to call my own for over a year until my new venture started to take shape. After that, I began visiting home every 5 to 6 months. I really wanted to bring my family over to Dubai with me, but Mary and the kids were hesitant. They didn't want to interrupt their school curriculum by moving, so they stayed back in Texas while I worked abroad. It was tough being apart, but I understood their decision to keep their lives as stable as possible. Last year, things started to change a bit in my family. My youngest daughter finished college and even got a job at her older sister's company. Right before she was moving out of the house, I planned a vacation to go home and spend some time with her. During that trip, I brought up the idea to Mary of moving to Dubai with me now that both our kids had moved out and were starting their careers. However, Mary turned down the idea because she was worried about leaving my mom alone. I then suggested that Mom could come with us to Dubai too, but neither of them liked the idea of leaving their hometown and moving to a country with such a different culture. I understood their concerns, as Middle Eastern culture is really different from what we're used to in the US, so I didn't push the issue further. During my last visit home, I had a serious conversation with Mary. I told her that I was planning to wrap up my business in Dubai and move back to Texas. It seemed like the best way to keep the family together, even if it meant giving up what I had built in Dubai. I thought sharing my plans to move back to Texas would make Mary happy, but it turned out quite the opposite. When I told her about my decision, her reaction was far from the excitement I expected. Confused, I asked her directly if she didn't want us to live together anymore. Her response took me by surprise. She said, "No, I'm happy that you work so hard to establish yourself there. Why would you want to leave everything and come back?" She had a point. Shutting down a business that required so much sacrifice and hard work wasn't an easy decision and might not even be the right one. But after 13 years of living apart from my family, and with our kids' education no longer a pressing responsibility, I felt a strong pull to return to my hometown, the place where I feel most at home. I tried to reassure her, explaining that I would continue to take care of her financially, just as I had been doing all these years. My hope was to find a way to be closer to my family while maintaining the support they needed. It was a tough conversation filled with emotions and practical concerns, but it was necessary as I considered the next steps in our lives together. I had big plans to start something new in Texas, especially since the country's economy was looking up again. Despite this, Mary wasn't on board, which really set off alarm bells for me. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, but the whole situation was turning into a red flag. The next day threw another curveball my way. Out of the blue, my mom showed up and advised me against making what she called a hasty decision to move back. I hadn't mentioned my plans to her or anyone else, so it must have been Mary who told her. This was a shock. While it was one thing for Mary to have reservations, having my mom echo those concerns really threw me into doubt about my decision. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was being too hasty. So, I reluctantly dropped the idea. However, I couldn't shake off the sadness and confusion about why Mary didn't want to live with me anymore. It made sense on some level, but it was still heartbreaking. The distance between us had grown so much that it was palpable, and it really clouded my mind. After I got back home, I found myself calling and texting her less and less, almost subconsciously. I thought maybe she would notice and bring it up, but it was just one of many attempts to understand what was really going on between us. But she didn't reach out to see if everything was okay. There were days when I wouldn't call her, and she didn't call me either. Days turned into weeks, and our communication became purely transactional. It all pointed to one painful conclusion: she no longer needed me. Feeling the weight of this, I decided to confront her last month. I asked her directly if she didn't love me anymore. Mary brushed off my concerns, telling me I was just overthinking things. She explained that she had been busy with the house and taking care of my mom, who has become more fragile with age. I didn't know what to say to that. It's not every day you find your wife bonding so well with her mother-in-law and caring for her as Mary has. Despite the confusion and the distance between us, I couldn't help but feel grateful for how kind Mary has been to my mom. This situation left me torn between my feelings of gratitude and my sense of loss over our drifting relationship. My unease grew every day, and I just couldn't understand why Mary wouldn't want to be with me. We have our own house, our major responsibilities with the kids are taken care of, and I've assured her that our lifestyle wouldn't suffer if we were together again. It just didn't add up why she wouldn't want me home. As many might guess, the thought crossed my mind. Maybe she found someone else. But how do I even begin to find out if that's the truth? Up until now, Mary hasn't shown any other signs that would make me suspect something like this. She has been an incredible mother, raising our children so well while I was away. It's no small feat what she's done, and she's managed all her roles with such grace. This dilemma left me in a tough spot. I wanted to trust her and believe in the life we've built together, but these doubts and the growing distance were making it hard. What should be my next step in unraveling this confusion and finding out what's really going on? Sometimes I felt bad for suspecting her, but you know how long-distance relationships work. Any advice on how to find this out? Well, the red flags pointed to her finding somebody else. I believed it now. Update 1: I'm grateful for all the advice and the stories of betrayal shared here. They've been a vital lesson. It turned out that Mary had been cheating on me, and my mother knew about it but didn't tell me anything. I'm still trying to understand why this happened to me. In search of some answers, I decided to make a surprise trip back home. I told no one about my plans, not even my mom. As I entered the house, I was really nervous, half expecting to find Mary with someone else. It's a scenario I've read about all too often: cheating spouse, houses, and the shock of discovery. But thankfully, nothing like that happened. When I walked in using the spare key, I found Mary alone in the kitchen. This unexpected situation and finding out about the cheating have left me reeling. I'm now faced with some tough decisions about how to handle this betrayal while trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Thank you for letting me share my story and for your support through this confusing time. When I arrived home unexpectedly, carrying a bouquet to make it seem like a pleasant surprise, Mary was clearly shocked to see me. Her surprise quickly turned to suspicion as she bombarded me with questions about why I was there. I told her I had a light workload that month, so I decided to come home unexpectedly. She managed to smile and tried to appear happy, but it was painfully obvious that her reaction was forced. Over the next few weeks, driven by a mix of hurt and suspicion, I took measures that I'm not proud of to discover the truth. I felt pushed to the edge, needing to know what was going on. I sneaked into her phone, eavesdropped on her conversations, and even went as far as planting a GPS tracker on her car and following her around town. These actions, though desperate, provided me with bits and pieces of information that together painted a clear picture of the situation during my absence. This period of snooping and gathering evidence was tough. It's something that I struggled with internally, as it went against my usual principles. But the need to know the truth about my relationship and what I was coming back to outweighed my reservations. Now, faced with the facts, I need to decide how to address this situation with Mary, balancing the hurt and the history we share together. Discovering Mary's affair was a crushing blow, especially learning that it had been ongoing for 8 years. On the day I arrived home unexpectedly, I noticed immediately how guarded she was about her phone. In the past, She might have had the chance to erase any suspicious messages or calls before I came home, but this time, she didn't anticipate my arrival. I tried to look through her phone that day but didn't get the opportunity. When I finally managed to access her phone later, I found nothing. She must have cleaned it out at the first opportunity. However, my doubts persisted, and I decided to place a GPS tracker in her car to find out more about her movements. This led me to follow her one day. Initially, everything seemed normal as she went into a hardware store. However, suspicion grew when I saw the store owner pull down the shutter and close up shop while she was still inside. This situation escalated my concerns into reality, confirming the affair in such a direct and painful way. I was forced to confront not only the betrayal, but also the extent of the secrecy involved. Now I'm left with the difficult task of deciding what to do next, given this revelation and the years of deceit that have come to light. Seeing Mary leave the shop after hours with the store owner, hastily reopening the shutters, left me reeling. My head spun with the reality of what I was witnessing, and it took everything in me not to storm into the shop right then. I worried that confronting the affair partner directly could backfire, especially if he recognized me and alerted Mary. Instead, I decided to bide my time and catch them together to avoid any missteps in exposing the truth. I meticulously followed Mary's movements over the next days. She had a routine of going out in the afternoons, sometimes to see my mom, other times to meet with friends or her own parents. I shadowed her on these outings, driven by a mix of determination and dread, waiting for her to slip up and meet her affair partner again. It was a grueling process, filled with starts and stops and endless waiting. Finally, yesterday, she went to visit my mom. Normally, I would refrain from following her on such visits, out of respect, and a lingering hope that nothing untoward would occur in such a setting. This cautious approach was partly why it had taken me so long to confirm my suspicions. This affair, now unmistakably real, demanded a confrontation, yet I was still strategizing the best way to approach such a painful conversation. Witnessing the scene at the hardware store was a staggering moment for me. I had hesitations about following Mary and my mom yesterday, half hoping they were just out for something ordinary like shopping. Despite my reservations, I followed them, driven by a nagging feeling I couldn't shake. When they stopped at the hardware store, my worst fears materialized. The affair partner emerged and greeted them both warmly right in front of the store. What happened next was beyond anything I could have prepared for. He kissed Mary while my mom looked on, seemingly unfazed. They all exchanged a few words, and then, to my utter shock, he hugged my mom before she got back into the car and left. Mary and her affair partner then entered the shop, and he pulled the shutter down once again. Seeing this unfold right in front of my eyes, not just the affair but my mom's apparent acceptance of the situation, was devastating. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. The reality of the betrayal, compounded by the involvement of my own mother, was overwhelming and left me in a state of disbelief and heartbreak. The sense of betrayal was compounded by the involvement of my own mother, leaving me feeling utterly suffocated by the truth. Needing a moment to catch my breath and compose myself, I walked away briefly, trying to process everything that had just unfolded. After gathering some courage, I returned to the hardware store and knocked on the shuttered door. There was no answer at first, so I knocked more vigorously. Finally, the affair partner opened the door, looking startled to see me. I asked him directly where Mary was, and he was visibly shaken, unable to respond. I didn't wait for him to recover. I pushed past him and entered the shop. The main area was dark, but I could hear faint sounds coming from the storeroom. Driven by a mix of anger and dread, I raced toward the noise. There I found Mary in a compromising position, clearly not expecting my arrival. The shock of the situation was overwhelming, confirming my worst fears in the most direct and painful way possible. Confronted with this reality, I was left to deal with the immediate emotional turmoil and the larger implications of these betrayals by those closest to me. In that fleeting moment, the chaos erupted into a physical altercation as the affair partner lunged at me, dragging me out of the storeroom while Mary's screams filled the air. Everything happened so fast that it took me a moment to fully grasp the situation. In self-defense, I managed to land a punch on the affair partner, breaking free from his grasp. Mary then emerged from the storeroom, hastily covering herself. Fueled by anger and betrayal, I confronted Mary, grabbing her and demanding to know the extent of the affair. The affair partner moved to intervene, but Mary stopped him, breaking down into tears. She pleaded with me to take the conversation home, away from the shop. Realizing the potential consequences of the physical scuffle and the need to address this matter more calmly, I decided to leave. Driven by a mix of shock and fury, I went straight to my mom's house. I stormed in, confronting her with the accusation, "You knew it!" The betrayal by my wife was one thing, but discovering that my own mother was complicit added a layer of hurt and complexity to the situation. Now I was faced with not only the breakdown of my marriage, but also the painful realization that my family dynamics had shifted irrevocably. The need for clear, honest discussions was pressing as I had to deal with the emotional fallout from these revelations. Confronting my mother, I blurted out, "You knew it! You also betrayed me!" Despite my outburst, she wasn't taken aback. Mary had called her ahead of time. Instead of reacting to my anger, she just cried and took my hand, pleading with me to calm down. Overwhelmed by the situation, I couldn't hold back my emotions any longer and broke down. By then, Mary had arrived. The sight of her only intensified my feelings of betrayal and anger. I demanded the truth from both of them. After much pressing, Mary finally opened up about her loneliness and struggles during the years I was away. "It's not easy to live alone for 13 years, she said. "You were so busy with your work that you hardly had any time for me. Your calls were limited to a few minutes, mostly just status checks on the children and mom. What about me?" I asked her directly how long the affair had been going on. She hesitated, then admitted it might have been 7 or 8 years. Hearing this was devastating. Not only had I been unaware of her emotional needs, but the affair had also been ongoing for such a significant portion of our time apart. This revelation forced me to reflect on the emotional distance that had grown between us and the role I may have played in the deterioration of our relationship. Now I needed to decide how we could possibly address these deep-seated issues and whether our relationship could be salvaged at all. Confronting Linda about the years of betrayal was one of the hardest moments of my life. She stood there, defensive and unapologetic, saying, "Do you think it's easy to live alone for 13 years? You were so busy with your own life. You forgot about mine. The phone calls were nothing more than check-ins about the kids and your mom. You never asked about me." I was stunned. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded. 7 or 8 years, maybe," she admitted without a hint of remorse. Hearing that was like a punch to the gut. The realization that I had been so blind to her needs and that she had chosen to solve her loneliness by cheating was devastating. It wasn't just the affair itself. It was the years of deceit and the fact that my own mother, who I'd always trusted, had known about it. I turned to my mom, hoping for some kind of explanation or understanding. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice cracking. Mom looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "You left us alone here. I thought you knew. Or maybe you didn't care enough to know. We had to stick together, and Linda was here for me." Her words felt like another betrayal. Here I was, thinking I was working hard for my family, providing for them from afar, only to realize that in my absence, everything had fallen apart. In that moment, my frustration and disbelief were overwhelming. I had spent years working hard in a foreign country, all to ensure that my family could live comfortably. Feeling betrayed and bewildered, I confronted Linda about why she hadn't just divorced me if she felt so disconnected. "I love you," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I never wanted to separate from you. Spending time with the affair partner was just a way to de-stress myself and kill my loneliness. He means nothing to me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The idea that her long-term affair meant nothing was hard to digest. It seemed implausible that such a significant betrayal could be dismissed as merely a way to alleviate loneliness. I turned to my mom, searching for some understanding of why she would condone or even support this betrayal. Her response was equally heartbreaking. "I know you hate me, but think of my perspective," she sobbed. "You left me alone here. Linda was the only one who was there for me." Their words suggested a profound disconnect between my intentions and how they experienced my absence. This complex web of emotions, loneliness, and betrayal left me grappling with the harsh realities of our relationships. Now, it was crucial to figure out if there was a path forward that could address the hurt and begin to mend the fractured bonds within my family. In that moment of overwhelming betrayal and pain, Hearing my mother's and Linda's justifications that Linda was fulfilling her needs and my mom was feeling supported by her didn't ease the sting of betrayal. As I stood up to leave, both tried to stop me, pleading for me to stay and talk it through. But I needed space. I was clear in my message, especially to Linda, telling her not to follow me home as I needed time alone to think. Driving back, I was engulfed by a mixture of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness. The thought that kept circling in my mind was whether any part of this affair was my fault. Was my dedication to providing for my family from abroad a mistake? Had my absence justified their actions in some way? It's common in situations like these to question your role and whether different choices might have led to a different outcome. However, while it's important to reflect on how your actions might have impacted your relationships, it's also crucial to remember that everyone is responsible for their own actions. An affair is a decision, not an inevitable consequence of circumstance. Feeling sick with all these thoughts is a normal response to such a deep betrayal. It might be helpful to seek support, whether through friends, family, or a professional, as you navigate these complex emotions. Taking time to process your feelings and deciding on your next steps is important. Reaching a place of understanding about what you want for your future and how to approach your relationships moving forward will take time and self-reflection. Update 2. You guys have been a great support. Thank you. Here's what happened next. I spent the next few days drowning in my sorrows. Then I drove to Houston to meet my daughters. They were not kids anymore, and they deserved to know what their mom was up to when I was busy providing for them. I did this also to safeguard myself. My plan was to leave the country, and Linda could use that against me to manipulate my daughters. They were shattered to know the truth, but my eldest daughter also said that sometimes she felt Linda and my mom were definitely up to something. She also suspected my mom of seeing a widower who lived 2 blocks away. Anyway, that's not my problem. My dad had passed away decades ago, so she could do whatever she wanted. However, her supporting Linda in all this was a problem for me. The next day, I packed my stuff and came back. Linda and my mom had been calling me since then. I think they came home to find an empty house, and that's when reality hit them. Yes, I abandoned them. The initial month of calls and texts were filled with apologies, pleadings, and requests to return home. But eventually, they got concerned about the money. I hadn't blocked them deliberately. I wanted to see them get anxious without money. I froze my bank accounts and credit cards. They lost their composure over that, which was expected because neither of them had any source of income. Mom was on a state pension, but it wasn't enough to cover the lifestyle they had been leading. They were desperately trying all means to get a response, but I had ghosted them. Mom has resorted to emotional blackmail, saying that Dad would have been heartbroken to see that I have left her alone in her old age. All their pleas are falling on deaf ears. They betrayed me so badly. I never suspected Linda of anything, and never checked her phone like people in long-distance relationships do, but I always respected her privacy. More than Linda, I felt betrayed by Mom. Sometimes when I had a dizzy feeling about Linda, seeing her strong bond with Mom made me feel lighter. In return, I got cheated upon. The reason they used to cover up Linda's cheating was so lame. She was lonely, so she decided to open her legs. She was feeling alone in her own house with children, surrounded by friends and family. Wow. If you compare it that way, I was lonelier. Literally alone in a foreign land with no family or friends. I could have also brought someone into my bed, but the difference is I didn't. I was so busy thinking about the well-being of my family that fooling around was the last thing on my mind. I was working hard, saving up so that I could move back home as soon as possible. When none of their advances got a response from me, they reached out to my daughters for help. Linda didn't know that I had told the truth to the girls, and she did exactly what I had expected. Linda badmouthed me in front of them, saying that I had financially cut them off. She also alleged that I was having an affair in the Gulf, or maybe had married someone over here. After listening to all her nonsense, my girls told her back that they knew the truth about her affair and to stay away. But Linda has been reaching out to the younger one, asking for help. The younger one is closer to Linda, and she's leveraging her innocence to extract money from her. Anyway, I'm not going to ask her to stop helping her mom. She's an adult and knows what to do. Mom also has been reaching out to my daughter for financial help. As for me, I'm still unable to move on from the feeling of betrayal. I have also not thought about divorce yet. It's going to dent my pocketbook. and necessarily divorce would be beneficial for Linda financially and also personally if she wants to marry the affair partner. But I'm not getting into that. She's already living in my house, and that's the maximum she can get from me. I'm out of the country and have no accountability, so whether divorced or not, it really doesn't matter to me. I'm trying to move on with my life. I'll update if anything develops. Update 3. Here's what happened next. After I financially cut them off, they tried all the resources they could. My older daughter refused to help them, but the younger one got manipulated into helping them. But she didn't earn much. She was in her first job with very little pay, which covered her basics. Despite that, she's saving some of it to help her mom. I felt proud of her, actually. Eventually, she got exhausted helping Linda. She suggested Linda get a job to sustain herself, but Linda took her for granted, saying that it was her responsibility to take care of her mother in times of need. The younger daughter did whatever she could from her little income, but when it became too much for her, she cut her off. Linda couldn't marry the affair partner because she's still married to me, so she's been reaching out to me for a divorce. She has been threatening me with all sorts of legal consequences, but you know what? I don't care. I'm out of the country. I don't think she has enough knowledge or resources to sue me in a cross-border setup, and even if she does, there's no punishment for abandoning your cheating wife as per the law of this land. So, yeah, good luck with her legal notice. The current status of Linda is that she is working at the affair partner's shop, and I don't know what she's getting in exchange for her service, money or something else. The affair partner doesn't have a proper house. He lives in his camper, and he also has an ailing father to take care of, so he's also financially not strong enough to provide for Princess Linda. As far as my mom is concerned, I sometimes feel bad for scorning her and wanting to help her out, but she gets a pension, and that should be sufficient for her to survive. She brought that on herself. I might make it up with her in the future, but not right now. Though she has said sorry for what she has done, it didn't feel like she was genuinely sorry for her actions. So I'll wait for the day when she genuinely repents of her mistakes. And my anger subsides, and my love for her overpowers my emotions. Some of you advised me to move on and enjoy the vibrant lifestyle of Dubai. Funny thing though, it's not as hunky-dory as it looks on social media. That royal, mesmerizing lifestyle portrayed on social media is not for all. It needs money, a huge lot of money. So I'll skip that for now. Laws concerning women are also quite strict here. Also, I'm not interested in using women's bodies to get over my grief. But yes, I've been traveling a lot since then. I've been to China and Bali so far. There's a long list of other Asian countries and cultures that I'm planning to explore. Subsequently, I will initiate a different thread to share my travel experience. Thanks for all the love and support. The days following my return to Dubai were filled with a sense of relief and sorrow. I had taken control of my life, yet the memories and betrayal lingered. Linda's constant calls and messages, pleading and threatening in equal measure, only served to remind me of the broken trust. Linda tried every trick in the book to get a reaction out of me. She would leave angry voicemails accusing me of abandoning my family, then switch to tearful messages begging for forgiveness. It was clear she was struggling without the financial support, and it didn't take long for her to resort to manipulation. One day she called and said, "You're ruining everything. How can you just leave us like this? Your daughters need you, I need you." I knew she was trying to guilt-trip me, but my resolve remained firm. "Linda," I replied calmly, "you made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences. I'm done being your safety net." Dealing with the aftermath wasn't easy. My daughters were caught in the middle, especially the younger one, Emily. She was torn between supporting her mother and acknowledging the truth about the betrayal. She called me one night, her voice trembling. "Dad, I don't know what to do. Mom is really struggling, but I can't just ignore what she did to you." "Emily," I said, trying to comfort her, "I know it's tough. You need to take care of yourself first. Don't let her manipulate you. She's an adult and needs to figure things out on her own." The reality of Linda's situation began to sink in. She couldn't marry her affair partner because we were still legally married, and the legal threats she had made were empty. She didn't have the resources or knowledge to pursue any serious legal action against me from halfway across the world. Her affair partner, Joe, wasn't much help either. He lived in a rundown camper and had his own problems to deal with, including an ailing father. Linda had traded stability and security for a fantasy that quickly crumbled around her. She ended up working at Joe's shop, likely for little to no pay, and certainly not the life of luxury she had imagined. As for my mom, she continued to reach out, but her apologies felt hollow. She tried to justify her actions, saying she was lonely and needed Linda's support, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive her just yet. She had betrayed my trust in the worst possible way. I decided to keep my distance until I felt she genuinely regretted her actions. In the meantime, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my work, traveled, and explored new cultures. I visited China, Bali, and other Asian countries, soaking in the experiences and trying to move past the pain. Each trip was a step towards healing, a way to find myself again after the turmoil. Dubai offered its own distractions. The city was vibrant and bustling, and though I wasn't living the extravagant lifestyle shown on social media, I found comfort in the simple things. I made new friends, tried new foods, and slowly started to enjoy life again. Throughout it all, I kept in touch with my daughters. They were my anchor, the reason I kept going. They had their own lives in Houston, but we made sure to stay connected. Our bond grew stronger as we navigated the aftermath of Linda's betrayal together. Reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized how much I had grown. I had faced one of the biggest challenges of my life and come out stronger. I learned the importance of self-respect and the need to set boundaries, even with those closest to you. I hadn't yet decided on the divorce. Part of me wanted to cut all ties with Linda, but another part was indifferent. She was already out of my life in every way that mattered. Whether we were legally married or not seemed trivial compared to the emotional distance that now separated us. As I moved forward, I focused on the future. I had big plans, both professionally and personally. I was determined to make the most of my new life in Dubai, to find happiness and fulfillment on my own terms. The betrayal had been a harsh lesson, but it had also been a catalyst for change, pushing me to reevaluate my priorities and strive for a better future. In the end, I realized that life is about more than just the challenges we face. It's about how we overcome them, how we grow and adapt. Linda's betrayal was a chapter in my life, but it wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new journey, one where I was in control, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about what lay ahead.